Okay, so 7.2, we're going to talk about a worksheet, adjustments, and financial statements. And actually, this is going to be quite a review for you guys because we've already talked about a worksheet. In previous sections, though, we've talked about a 6-column worksheet, and now we're just going to take it up one step, and we're actually going to put our adjustments on there. They're also going to teach you about a 10-column worksheet. However, I'm not really a big fan of the 10 column, so we're going to stick to the 8 column. And then we'll talk about some other financial statements as well. Okay, so have your textbook handy because we're going to refer back to that. If you look on page 217 of your textbook, and if you need too fast, just pause it and it'll give you time to have a flip through there. And you can see that there is the balance sheet for environmental consulting services listed there for you. In the trial balance column is what your accounts are all worth at the end of your either the month or the year or how often you're doing your books. And you'll see now that there are 2 columns called adjustments, debits, and credits. And that is where we're going to now place our adjustments. Okay, so we are going to be following this environmental consulting services, and we're going to do the following adjustments right here. So we're going to talk about account made of all supplies on hand shows $900 worth left on January 31st. So we're going to do an adjustment for supplies. We're going to do an adjustment of our insurance account and our prepaid rent and equipment depreciation. So I'm going to show you an example of each of those. So supplies has an opening balance of $1,000. However, the inventory taken at the end of the fiscal period indicates only $900 worth of supplies. So we know that there's $100 that's going to have to go to our supplies expense. Okay, and we know that our T accounts are going to look like this, if you want to have a quick look at it. Starting with 1,000, using 100, 900 left. This 100 has to go to our supplies expense. Okay, we have to do the same thing with our prepaid insurance and our prepaid rent. So in January, a 2820 one-year insurance policy was purchased. At the end of the current month, 11 months of insurance remain. 1 month has been used up, so it's necessary to reduce our prepaid insurance by $235. Found that by just dividing the 2,820 into 12 equal parts. So our expense is going to have to be $235. On January 1st, rent of $5,100 was prepaid for January, February, March. On the January 31st, the rent for January is no longer prepaid, and expense must be recorded. So they took 1/3 of the $5,100 to come up with $1,700. That is the amount that has to go to our prepaid and our rent expense. Okay, and our equipment. Fixed assets such as equipment depreciate each year. Equipment may be depreciated at a rate of up to 20% per year. For income tax purposes, use the declining balance method. So we're just going to reduce it by a straight 20,000. So our depreciation is going to be $480. Now, I just have to flip through our book here. And I believe if you look at page 219, find the supplies account. It's the 3rd line. Okay, and if I'm going too fast, just pause and go straight across. You see that the debit is 1,000. Our adjustment, we have to bring it down by 100. So the 100 has to go in the credit column. However, now our supplies expense has to be debited $100. And if you look at the very last line, it says supplies expense, debit $100. That's taken care of our our first adjustment. So ignore this C handouts. What I'm doing right with you is I'm going through the textbook with you. Okay, and then turn the page And on page 220, we're going to look to see what the second adjustment is going to look like. Our prepaid insurance, if you find that on line 4, take your hand and you see 2,820 and follow it over. Our adjustment for that is going to be $235. And we need to have our insurance expense debited of $235. So if you look at the last line, you'll see that. Turn to page 221 is our third adjustment. That is to prepaid rent. You see, we started out with $5,100. We now have to credit it $1,700. The second part of that adjustment goes to our rent expense on the very last line. And then if you turn to page 223, you're going to see our accumulated depreciation. We need to bring it down $480. So you follow across, you see $480 credit, and on the depreciation expense equipment, you see a debit of $480. Okay, and still going here. Now if you want to look here, we've now put all of our adjustments in, and now we want to complete the worksheet. And if you look on your textbook in page 223 again, this is kind of the best way I can show you. Go to the bottom, take your fingers and put them in the debit and credit columns of your adjustment column. Carry it all the way down until you see a straight line. That line shows that you are adding, and you see that it's 2,515. Those are your total of your adjustments. Now, you continue the income statement and balance sheet columns just like I had taught you earlier when we first started talking about the 6-column worksheet. And then you total them up and you find that you have a net income and you record that as well. So when you're doing your own worksheet, this page 223 is an example for you. Okay, now I think that's all I have to show you here. We already know about net income and net loss. So I'm not going to spend time on this lesson to talk to you about that. We've already talked about balancing the worksheet. We don't need to cover that as well. Okay, the steps in preparing an 8-column, you know that as well as 2. The 10-column worksheet, I'm not going to go through it with you, but there is an example on page 225. The only difference here is that on the very top of the worksheet, you see trial balance, adjustments, and adjusted trial balance. What that is it is just 2 columns that you use to total everything up. But for me, I just think it adds a little extra work. So we will not be dealing with a 10-column worksheet. And then like you did before, you use your information worksheet to make an income statement that looks like this, and a balance sheet that looks like this. And you've done that as well already too, so you know exactly what you're going to do. If you're confused, just find these examples in your textbook and use them as a reference. Okay, and I think that's everything to get you going on your adjustments.